Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, entonces vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, entonces vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, ay, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, entonces vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, entonces vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos sabes de luchitola, entonces vos posiguiele a weisa.
Lovely morning to you. I'm going to have to do this in English. I'm sorry, but Papiamento is not up to stage yet, but I'm working on it. Maybe next time when I make a presentation, it might be in Papiamento, but I'm working on that. It's a big honor to be here in front of you to present the continent of Africa. Africa is so big, and there's so many varieties, so many things from the north to the south, from the east to the west, even in the center, that Africa is not homogeneous. In Europe, on the streets of Europe, people talk about Africa as if it's just one country, one people, but we're actually very diverse. And there are lots of things about Africa which a lot of people don't know. And I'm going to try to touch on a few of them this morning. It's impossible to present Africa in 15 minutes. But I'm going to try the best I can to present as much of it as I can within the given time. The motherland, Africa, is a very big continent. It's the second largest continent in the world. You might not be aware of that because when you look at the map, it looks small, but it's actually the second largest. It covers an area of 30.37 million square meters, and it has a population of 1.4 billion people, 54 independent countries. Some of them are very small, some of them like Mauritius, they're just small islands, like Cape Verde, they're small islands. But they're all independent countries. 54 of them, different people, different culture, different languages. The archaeological findings tell us that Africa is the source of humanity. Africa is where it all started from. All the research work that have been done point to the fact that Africa is the source of humanity. And we're proud, we're happy to come from the motherland. So actually when we talk about the motherland, we're not just talking about us here coming from Africa. We're talking about the whole of humanity starting from Africa. Now, the pre-colonial Africa was a very peaceful, very nice place where people relied on nature for their cures. They relied on nature for everything. There was lots of civilization, contrary to what you might have heard, contrary to what you must have read in the Western media about Africans being uncivilized. In fact, the main civilization of the world came from Africa. We have the ancient Egypt, the innovation in architecture, medicine, and governance, Mali Empire, with the wealth and knowledge under Mansa Musa, which we all know. You have the great Zimbabwe architectural marvels, and of course, you got the Benin Kingdom. The Benin Kingdom was so important that the British Empire sent a whole army to go and destroy it and to steal the artifacts. They were very shocked to find how civilized, how very authentic these things were. And today, when you go to the British Museum, half of what they have in there half of what you have there come from Africa. They're from Benin. And there's been a lot of appeal to the British to send back the artifacts to Africa. They stole things from the Benin Empire. They stole things also from Ghana, of course. And we've got Benin artifacts all over the world. All over the world, and a lot of these countries are sending them back to Africa. Now, if we were not civilized enough, where did this artistry, where did this know-how, where did this sophistication come from? We had well-established kingdoms. We had societies that were well organized around the kings, around the obas, around the traditional rulers, and we were a very organized continent. Now, I'm going to skip a big chunk of the information, a lot of which you already have. I'm not going to talk about slavery and that episode because it's all in public thing. I'm going to focus on the colonial part. Now, we had Africa partitioned, just like land, just like piece of land in Bandabo that is just cut among family members. Africa partitioned among different countries where they rule just like it is their yard, it is just their garden. They take everything there, they mine all the natural resources, they take everything. And you can see all the countries that were colonized. There were only 2 countries in Africa that were never colonies, just 2. And Ethiopia was the main country in Africa that had no colonial master because the Italians came wanting to colonize Ethiopia, and they were fought off by the Ethiopians, and they were not able to conquer it. And that was why Ethiopia remains today the biggest African country that was never a colony. We had a little country in Liberia in West Africa, which was also not colonized, but this was the place where the slaves were returned when the United States decided that they didn't need slaves anymore, and they decided to dump them back in Africa. And we had quite a number of returnees who came back to Africa directly after the slave trade. But this was the sort of setting we had where Africa was partitioned. Africa has very rich cultural heritage. We have different parts of Africa with their different cultures, with their different organizations, with their different feudal system. And the beauty of Africa is in the colors. Everywhere you go, every tribe you touch, you can see the uniqueness of the people. Vibrant tradition in music and dancing festival, diversity of languages, over 2,000 languages. And I'm not just talking about dialects, I'm talking about languages that are completely different one from the other. In Nigeria alone, we've got 280 different languages, different ethnic groups. We've got deep spiritual practices. You must have heard of Yemoja, and you heard of Ogun, and you have of Oshun, you have of Oya, you have of Shango, and all these gods these are just the ones from Nigeria. You got it all over in different parts of Africa where people have very deep religious conviction. And they kept on to these convictions. And when the British came, for example, in West Africa, and when the French came, the first thing they tried to do was to destroy the religion practices. They brought Christianity at the same time as the Christians were stealing people, taking them in ships and shipping them away. We have reverence for the elders. One of the things which is very peculiar to Africa is the respect that young people give to their elders, and it's something that is very African. It's very ingrained in the culture. You could hardly even look up into your father's face or into an elder's face. The Western civilization took a lot of this away from us, but it is still part of our culture. Now, the African Union, which you must all already know about, is the organization which brings together all the African nations where they discuss, where they talk about cooperation and they talk about politics and things like this. The African Union was created on the 25th of May in 1963. It was originally called the Organization of African Union. It changed its name to African Union. And today we always have an annual celebration of the African Day, which is 25th of May. The African Union divided Africa, or the Afro-descendants, or people of African descent, into 6 different groups. So you got the North, we got the African Union regions, the North, which has a population of 264 million people with 7 countries. The South, with 10 member states with population of nearly 70 million, including South Africa, Angola, and Malawi. Then we've got West, which has 15 member states with 439 million people, half of these 439 coming from Nigeria alone. And these countries include Nigeria, Senegal, and Ghana. The East has 14 members with a population of 485 million people. The Central region, which is which includes the Central African Republic, with a population of 202 million people, Burundi, Cameroon, and Gabon in there. And then the most important of all, lo and behold, the diaspora, which is the 6th group. And that is where we belong. That is where Curaçao is. We're in the 6th region, which is the diaspora. And the diaspora includes all the black people living outside Africa. And for this, we count a population of about 200 million people. So altogether, we count a population of about 1.4 billion people all across Africa. Now, Africa is very rich. Africa is the continent, is the one continent where if you shut it up, the whole world collapses. There is no African country that has not got one form of mineral or another, one form of natural resource or another. I take a short break, just an announcement. The slide here will be sent to everybody who gives an email address. So don't bother about it. Anyone who gives an email address, we have a copy of the of the presentation, so you can always look back at it at your own pace. So, in Africa, every country has got natural resources. We've got iron, bauxite, zinc, titanium, copper, gold, name it, and we've got it in Africa. The question you might ask me is, okay, with all these resources, why is Africa the way it is? That's a question for another time. We'll come back to that at another stage. This Africa in the 21st century. Wealth is the place of Africa in the world today. And the place of Africa in the world today is such that we have the fastest growing economies in the world. Africa is the one continent where people are still producing children. In lots of Europe, they've got dogs and they've got cats, they've got pets. In Africa, we are still producing children. The reproduction rate is still high. Here down, even in the Caribbean, you have a situation in which the population is diminishing because people have become so selfish, they don't have children anymore. And this is creating problem, it's putting a lot of pressure. There is the aging population in Europe, and even here in the Caribbean, there is the aging population where you've got more old people than young people. When you get into Africa, you'll be very amazed because most of the people you will see are young people. The population is very young. In Europe, the population is old. So, we've got the fastest growing world economies. We've got fast growing urban centers like Lagos with over 20 million people expanding all the time. And we've got several challenges though. And this is where the issue is. We can tell ourselves the truth. Africa has got issues. We've got issue with climate change, which is not, which is not the fault of Africans themselves, which is global. But we also got a lot of political instability, in some countries, there are many democracies that function very well in Africa. It's not a general thing, but there are some places where the politicians have become so rich and they enrich themselves and they don't care about the people and they hang on to power. But this is not only in Africa. We've just seen Donald Trump being elected as the president of the United States. So it's not something peculiar just to Africa. Then we've got a corruption of political leaders in some of the countries. And this is why we have people like the military ruler in Burkina Faso and all these young militants coming into power and throwing out the old group that don't care very much about the people. Then also in Africa, you have some countries where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, but it's not only in Africa. This is what capitalism does, and we have that even here on this island. We have it in the United States where you've got people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and people who get richer, while the others are paid $5 per hour to work in McDonald's, and they cannot afford to pay their rent. So we have these issues in Africa too. But Africa is a beautiful place. Africa is the place where things are looking up, where things are growing. Take a break to welcome you home. Welcome to Africa. Africa is waiting for you. Africa starts to grant citizenship to people in diaspora. We have a number of countries that are currently discussing this, And we have countries that have already implemented this, where people in diaspora who can prove that they are black and they live in wherever can come back and claim their nationality. Then we got a growing trend of diasporas visiting Africa. They go into places like Ghana mostly, and they go to Nigeria, they're going to Togo and Benin and Senegal, and they go into different places. A lot of people are doing their DNAs to, to find out what part of Africa they come from. Then we've got cultural exchange programs, especially among young people, where we have lots of young people who are visiting Africa, who are being told about Africa, because the young people are the future. Now, just a little test on Africa. Test your view of African people. What do you see? If this is the view that you see of Africa, your views are probably outdated. You can meet some other Africans, what they look like, and where the majority of Africans, this is what you will see. The views that you have of African homes, if this is what you see of African homes, you probably lost touch with what Africa really looks like. This is Lagos, Nigeria. This is a co-Atlantic area in Lagos, Nigeria. This is Cairo in Egypt. This is Port Louis in Mauritius, and this is Abidjan. This is in Tanzania. This is Lagos, Nigeria. This is Addis Ababa. And these are the things that they don't show you, that you don't see, that you don't know about Africa, because the image of Africa that is portrayed is image of people who are jumping and climbing on the trees and who are living on huts. But you will be very amazed when you get to Africa to see exactly what Africa looks like. Now reconnecting and making the bridge, raising awareness on both sides. That's raising awareness in diaspora and raising awareness in Africa to say what we really share in common. Embracing the goals of recognition, justice and development, engaging with initiatives that promote education and cultural heritage, and building network between Africa and the diaspora. Now, your resources. It's very difficult to present Africa within short minutes, and I've had this difficulty lots of times. I'm asked to talk about Africa. So what I've done is I've built a website where you can actually get all the information that you need on Africa. There's a Lao Shen that says, give a man fish and feed him for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, he can feed himself forever. The same way, africoso.com is both the fishing tool and the pond from where you will catch fish. It contains a lot of information, a hell lot of information you'll find there. There's a knowledge base on the website that contains information on Africa, contains information on slavery, lots of information, pages and pages of information on slavery, on Africa. It answers all the questions. The biggest city, the largest, the religion, everything you want to know about Africa, you find on the knowledge base on Africa. You find everything about slavery on the knowledge base on slavery, including information on every country that was involved, how many people they carried, when they started, when they ended, and whether they've apologized for slavery or not. On colonization, you find lots of information there as well. Knowledge based on dishonorable people, people who are prominent in history, but who were very dishonorable, who thought that slavery was correct, including people in churches. And you get lots of information on them, including the Queen of England, whose picture you see there. These are people who did not care about humanity. You got lots of information on them. Then you got information of the independence fighters, people who were fighting for independence of the different countries. Kwame Nkrumah, all of them, you find information on all of them in the knowledge base of the Africoso website. Then on misinformation, all the wrong information that people have about Africa, you find on this website. You find a list of them, and you find all the answers. You find this being corrected. You find information on the people on this island who are leaders, who are promoting African heritage. You find it on the website. You find information on the different international organizations that are working on emancipation, on reparation and everything. You find it on the website. And you find information on organizations on this island there too. In conclusion, in the last minute, Africa is on the move, developing at a fast pace. Africa is home for you with an open door. The door in Africa is open. This is where, this is your home. No better time than now to rediscover Africa. Awareness is key to success in the second decade. So awareness, awareness, awareness. And Africa also is your rich information source. No more excuses for diaspora ignorance on Africa. Thank you. I've been told.
Si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, ay, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado, si vos conocemos historia, vos conocemos mes.
Si vos conocemos mes, si vos conocemos pasado.